that is not sufficiently raised in the former, at least the former edition of the Black Sea and Balkan Security Forum, which is the interconnectivity with the sea, in which Black Sea is connected, and of course the Mediterranean Sea. This is why we decided with Georgia to take the opportunity for having 4 panelists coming from both sides of the Mediterranean Sea. From the northern side, our colleague from Greece is here, and from the, let's say, middle, Turkey, and from the southern and oriental shores and occidental meridional shores of Mediterranean Sea, with my friend and colleague Hassane from Morocco. Mare Nostrum is frequently presented to say and to forecast the bridge between the shores of the northern parts and the southern parts of the Mediterranean Sea. But of course, let's not forget that Puntus Uxinus as well has this interconnectivity. By the way, our Turkish friends do not call it the same way. There is the White Sea, Mediterranean Sea, and the Black Sea, Kara Deniz, am I correct? And Akdeniz. I think I can bring these elements, historical elements, in perspective to see what is at the core of the strategic continuum between Black Sea, Mediterranean Sea, and Adriatic Sea. Let's not forget that European Union has 3 seas: Baltic, Mediterranean, Adriatic, and Black Sea. This is true for European Union as well as for NATO. And we will see throughout our discussion that there's a lot of organization, institution, EU Eastern Partnership, EU Neighboring Policy, EU Eastern Partnership of 2009, EU Neighboring Policy of 2017, Euromed, which was launched initially in 1995, which was rebooted with the Union for the Mediterranean in 2008. Let's not forget the NATO Mediterranean Dialogue, which is also an element of quite relative importance. So bridge between Europe, Africa, and Asia throughout 3 what I call common unacceptable threats that has to be raised all together in a common endeavor. First of all, the terrorist insistment since the 1990s. All of your countries have been worried, have been tackling terrorist threats. Let's not forget Casablanca attack in 2004. Let's not, of course, forget the attacks in Turkey, which came to a peak between 2015 and 2017. Let's not forget the 1997 Luxor attack in Egypt and the Ansar Beit al-Maqdis, which is currently putting a threat since 2013 and its alignment with Daesh in Egypt. Second question, the irregular migration and its weaponization by criminal organization, which is also a matter of great concern, but I had to add a matter of responsibility and therefore a common response to that. Interpol mentioned the fact that the criminalization of migration makes these criminal organizations win 4 to 5 billion a year. We must address this, as Frontex in Warsaw is not sufficiently empowered, only 950 million of budget. And of course, last but not least, the asymmetry of development, which has been triggering the Arab Spring in 2010 and 2011, and which has been followed up by revolution, counter-revolution, and of course addressing the question of democracy, the question of governance, which is at the core, I think, of the stability or the instability of the area. So, having said these preliminary remarks, I wanted to bring out a certain number of questions that I want to address to our panel, not forgetting that I haven't presented my distinguished panelists. They are more than distinguished panelists, they are friends and colleagues. Hassane, SAOUDI, Associate Researcher of the Royal Institute for Strategic Studies, IRES, with our friend Tafik Moulin, who is the president. Tacan, ILDEM, to his left, the chairman of the Center for Economics and Foreign Policy Studies, EDAM. I read with very much interest the recent piece that you brought out at the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, the Ross Moth seminar which was held in Antalya a few days ago on the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Maybe you can follow up on that. Mohamed ORABI, president of the Egyptian Council on Foreign Affairs, which is an NGO which is based in Egypt, and not forgetting that we are celebrating this year 80 years of the Arab League in your country, and that is something important to remind. And of course, last but not least, Symeon TSOMOKOS, the founder of the Delphi Economic Forum, which is also having its anniversary, 10 years of existence, if I'm correct. And this happened very recently during the last edition, the 9 April, I think. So again, good anniversary to you as well as our colleague Mohamed ORABI for the Arab League. So I have a lot of questions that I want to raise, but I think the first one, and I will go to Hassane. What type of action do the big players play in the Mediterranean Sea? We spoke about the United States with the Sixth Fleet. We spoke about Russia with the Black Fleet. But there's a lot of other actors in the Mediterranean area, and this, of course, is a challenge, the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. Therefore, as a strategic continuum, as I mentioned, what strategies can be addressed with this shared threats such as terrorism, trafficking, and irregular migration? I do have to say that we will make an exception. Hassane will speak in French, and you will have the translation in English.
Merci.
Thank you, dear Emmanuel. I want to thank the New Strategy Center for having invited me. I have to admit, when I noticed the title, Emmanuel's title, I have quite many mixed feelings. I did not know whether I should be pessimistic or optimistic. And now getting back to his question, we are talking about absolutely strategic areas, the Black Sea, the Mediterranean Sea. However, unfortunately, there are also conflict areas at various levels. The Black Sea or the Mediterranean Sea should learn, well, actually the Black Sea should learn from the Mediterranean Sea, but what can the Black Sea learn as long as the Mediterranean Sea is still an ongoing area of conflict? The Arab Spring is actually a sad winter with many instability elements. We have Lebanon, we have Syria, and of course everything around the Mediterranean Sea makes the Mediterranean Sea unfit for providing lessons to learn for the Black Sea. We see foreign influence, especially the Russian influence, which of course is now more severe given the Ukraine situation. But getting back to Emmanuel's question, of course it is an important matter. The terrorist impact, I mean. And unfortunately, that is not a recent matter, and the Mediterranean Sea has seen an exacerbation of the terrorist attacks. The events in Libya enabled or allowed or Libyan terrorist elements to move on up to the heart of Africa, and now we are witnessing at an epicenter of terrorism in the sub-Saharan Africa. There are different gray areas, unfortunately, that are difficult to mitigate when acting only as an individual state. So it takes international coalitions. The fight against terrorism has demonstrated that only one state cannot fight against this cross-border threat. As being cross-border, obviously it has no borders, and it has penetrated from Libya to the shores of the Atlantic. And if tomorrow terrorism meets piracy, there will be nothing unexpected but something very difficult to tackle and to solve. Now, getting back to the Mediterranean Sea, that should be an area of peace and cooperation. However, unfortunately, it is an area of great conflict. On the other hand, we should be optimistic, and we should mention several important actions. I am glad that, for example, in Syria and in Turkey, things are settling down. And the separatists are getting back to reason, because they did understand that dismantling countries has become a real threat. So I have to congratulate my Turkish colleague for a more settled situation in this region.
There's been a recent initiative coming from this part of Europe, Central and Eastern Europe, what we call now the CEE, on interconnectivity between the shores. There is the 3 EU seas. Of course, you're not part of it, but Greece has joined in recently, being the 13 member states. But there is a new perspective and maybe a new geopolitical tool, which is the European political community, which was gathered a few days ago in Tirana, where your president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, was present. So how do you see the need, and how do you, let's say, engage more in organization to tackle a certain number of questions where we need countries who are members of the European Union, but maybe not members of NATO with maybe not members of the European Union, and of course our African and Asian partners maybe who are not part of any of these two organizations. Please.
Well, first of all, it is a great pleasure to be part of this panel. And I'm glad that even if it is at the last moment I was aware of being part of this panel, I could make it. The question in hand is quite important. You mentioned the location of different countries and their relationship with both seas. And Turkey is, due to its geographical location, is both a Black Sea nation but also a Mediterranean nation. Coming to the European political community, I think since its inception, it's still evolving. And what we need to see is that, as you rightly said, Europe is larger than EU. And European political community can provide a forum of consultation and discussion on critical issues. It can be energy security, it can be terrorism, it can be food security, it can be arms control and confidence building measures, since they relate to the continent, European continent. And in any case, European political community should be inclusive, and the governance model should not replicate what EU does, because it's more than EU. Therefore, inclusivity, flexibility, and participation with different perspectives and visions would be important. That's why perhaps initially there was a hesitancy on the part of the ones who came with the idea to convene European political community, whether to include Turkey or not. And there was a hesitancy on the part of Turkey whether it should participate in it or not. But as you rightly mentioned, President Erdogan was part of the discussions in Tirana. Now, coming back to the threats and challenges which we face, not only in the Mediterranean Sea, but the Black Sea, and I'm grateful to the organizers of this edition of Black Sea and Balkan Security Forum, that there is such a geographical continuum recognized in having such a panel, because whatever we see in the geopolitical landscape that we are in, and strategic, systemic competition is one important element of it, and we see the presence of not only Russia in the Black Sea, but other stakeholders, and we also see Russia, since the annexation of Crimea in 2014, to project power to the Mediterranean. So it was with the aim of projecting power to the Mediterranean that it created anti-access area denial capabilities in the Black Sea. So I very much support the idea of recognizing this geographical continuum. Nevertheless, we should also be aware of the specificities of each geography. For instance, Black Sea has its own specificities. I mean, when I talk about Montreux Convention, it may not relate to Mediterranean Sea. Therefore, we should be finding some solutions which may be, as lessons learned, useful to the other region. As to the challenges coming from the south, having served at NATO, I can say that there is always an undeclared competition between the threats and challenges emanating from the east and what they mean from the south. But in 2023, NATO commissioned an independent expert group to tackle NATO's engagement with its southern neighborhood. And I think it was very important. And in 2024 Washington summit, the leaders had endorsed this study with actionable concrete measures, and definitely those that relate to countering terrorism, and we have partners that belong to Mediterranean Dialogue and Istanbul Cooperation Initiative, and depending on their demands, it's a demand-driven process, the engagement is very important in all these areas. Now, what you referred as recent developments in Syria, of course, there are hopeful developments, but at the same time, things that we should be extremely cautious about. It is true that there are developments to bring an end to the terrorist activities of PKK that have took so many casualties, more than 40,000 people, and it would be good to bring an end to it. But there are also extensions of PKK in Syria, and we are not sure whether they are also agreeing to laying down weapons, because if you stop terrorism in Turkey, but the shootouts of this terrorist organization will still aim at security, safety of Turkey and territorial integrity of Turkey, then it would be a big issue. And one last thing related to that, I was quite shocked and surprised with what Secretary Rubio had said at the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, speculating about what may happen in Syria. I don't think that it's a helpful statement at all, because what we need to do is to give confidence to the interim government, continue supporting the democratic processes in the country, but also for all ethnic and religious groups to be integrated in the process with a view to maintaining the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Syria. It's a must. Otherwise, we will have more chaos in the region, and that will lead to more terrorism in different countries, including North Africa and Middle East region. So we need to be very careful on this issue, I think.
Thank you so much for this reminder, which is, I think, very important. Now, going back and continuing on what you said, both Hassane and Tacan, going back to Egypt, there's also another element I think we haven't tackled yet, and I wanted to address with you, Mohamed, is energy security as a pillar of, let's say, interconnectivity or better diplomacy between North, South, East, and West. Egypt is a very interesting example of that, because you have an East Med gazoduct on which you are working, connecting the South and the North of Sea, from Egypt to Greece. There is a lot of prospect, as you very well know, on IMAC, India, Middle East corridor, bringing back maybe a question that we haven't raised, a bear in the room, which is Israel and your neighboring country with Gaza. Maybe you can say how you overcome this question. Syria has been, in a way, to this extent, been overcome positively. We have to assess that in the long term. How do you see this energy element, or how do you see oil and gas fueling a sort of new diplomacy between northern and southern, eastern and western shores of the Mediterranean Sea?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. In the meantime, I think I should add, you mentioned a lot of celebrations for this year in Egypt. Also, the Egyptian Foreign Relations Council will celebrate 25th anniversary. So yes, we will invite you to come to attend, this celebration very soon. I think you asked me a very specific, question, but I think it is so important and even crucial, and it was part of the Egyptian strategy for many years. Egypt was trying to be a hub for energy, to the Mediterranean, I would say, countries. And you just mentioned the cooperation between Egypt and Greece and Cyprus. And of course, we have now another element which I think will enhance our position, our rapport with Turkey. Because, when we start this kind of cooperation between Egypt and Greece and Cyprus, I think we had some, I would say, tension between Egypt and Turkey. But now, one of the elements of stability in our region is this rapport between the two countries. And I think it has a sort of impact also on Libya and some other, I would say, crucial or hot points in our region. So this is actually, it will manifest that, this kind of cooperation between the two sides from the Mediterranean, I think it will help to implement stability and peace and development also, because we have now also engaged in a very good relationship with Turkey, for investment and build a lot of joint projects in Egypt. But let me also try to put another emphasis, actually, which is so important now, because we have now new parameters in our, I would say, global politics. Maybe the first thing is that there is no ultimate victory and there is no complete defeat. And also the second thing, it might be also that, you know, everything is transboundaries. The third, all the crises, they are subject to be prolonged. There is no possible, or let us say, imminent political solution for most of the crises which we are witnessing now. The situation in Ukraine and the situation in Gaza, actually, it proves what I am saying. Also, there's a new, I would say, phenomena in our region, which is the non-state actors, and this might be subject also to be, you know, transferred to the other side of the Mediterranean, and it will also, you know, might be a new belt of terrorism in the Sahel and sub-Saharan countries in Africa. So a lot of new, actually, aspects and phenomena which I think it will govern the strategy for the whole world for the next few years. All of us, actually, we are sailing in a turbulent sea. It's not, you know, you cannot say that some part of the world is quiet and peaceful and the others. Everything actually is, as I said, transboundaries, and it will affect each other. But anyway, if you go back to your questions about the energy security, which is now part of also the international strategy for each country, you just mentioned in the first session that Romania, it might be a hub also for the gas, you know, export on the 27th, the year 27th, which will be a very important, you know, change in the geopolitics of this area. So energy is a main part of any, I would say, attempts to have, let us say, strategy, or in the meantime to impose hegemony on certain places in our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohamed, for this elements of response. We will, of course, be present in Cairo for your anniversary. Now let me shift to Symeon. Symeon, you're not speaking on behalf of Greece, of course, but you are Greek. And you have this perspective, let's say, a 360 degrees diplomacy. You are a Western Balkan country, you are a Mediterranean country, but of course, you are also close to the Black Sea, because the Montreux Convention is about the Bosphorus Strait and the Dardanelles Strait as well. So it enters into Mediterranean agenda as well. And of course, as we know, there is the Paris 1947 agreement on the disarmament of the Greek islands, which of course may be a question of debate between Turkey and Greece. So my question is, how does
Greece... We have no
Greece...
debates between Greece and Turkey. We have no debates.
Yeah,
We're entirely friends. We have only issues to discuss.
Maybe tomorrow, yeah. So my question, Symeon, how do you see as a Greek diplomat, think tanker, the role of your country as a pivotal country?
Yes.
Because as I mentioned, you joined recently the BAPS, Baltic Adriatic Black Sea Initiative. You're the 13th country. The summit was in Warsaw 2 weeks ago. And I was in Warsaw for a side event, and we had a very interesting discussion of how Greece sees its role, not only as a Med country, you're part of Med 9, you're part of NATO, you're part of the European Union, and you also are playing a pivotal role between Western and Eastern Balkans. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And of course, many thanks goes to Mr. Skoutaru, who is a brother in arms, and he's always coming to our conference in Delphi as well. And I'm delighted to be here. And I must tell you, it is a great honor to participate in this panel with so distinguished speakers who have devoted their lives to diplomacy around, Europe and the region. So the opinions and the views that I'm going to share with you briefly are, as you said, primarily my own opinions and not of the Greek government. So I think that the Mediterranean has never been just a theater of history, in my view. It has been a forge of history. And as the Black Sea now emerges as Europe's most volatile frontier, the Mediterranean offers not just lessons, but I think warnings. The great issue of the European strategy, and when I say European, Mr. Ambassador, I mean the European Union. in the last 2 decades has been the belief, we made a mistake, that peace, once achieved, it is self-sustaining. The Mediterranean disproved that, and the Black Sea shatters it, I think. The collapse of Libya, you mentioned it before, the conflict in Syria, the unchecked influence of external actors in the Levant, these were not failures of diplomacy alone, in my humble opinion. They were failures of strategic imagination. We feared instability as episodic rather than as systemic. In my view, the same danger now haunts the Black Sea, to treat it as a temporary crisis rather than a long-term strategic theater. What binds, in my humble opinion again, the Mediterranean and the Black Sea is their shared fate as contested zones between great powers. In both, we see the same 3-layered competition: hard security, economic connectivity, and narrative legitimacy. Moscow, in particular, views the Black Sea not merely as a defensive buffer, but as a forward operating space, militarily, economically, and symbolically. Crimea was not an isolated move. It was the cornerstone of a Black Sea doctrine that stretched from Sevastopol to Syria. As we, as Europeans, again the European Union members, must finally acknowledge that strategy does not nowadays lie in treaties. It lies in terrain, it lies in presence, and it lies in leverage. In the Mediterranean, we learned, often too late, that energy security, all the speakers mentioned, must be treated as national security. The East Med pipeline, the LNG terminals in Alexandroupolis, which is close to the Turkish border, the vertical gas corridors, all these were not just commercial undertakings, they are geopolitical tools. In the Black Sea, I think the same principle must apply. We must accelerate investments in critical infrastructure, Black Sea ports, intermodal rail links, energy diversification platforms, and all must be embedded in a regional vision. In my view, this is what the European Union should immediately launch. This is an idea that I have, perhaps a Black Sea infrastructure and security initiative, combining public funding, strategic investments, guarantees, and co-financing by the EBRD and the European Investment Bank. In the Mediterranean, the regional formats mattered. The East Med Gas Forum, despite its modest profile, provided a platform for trust building and collective action. We need, I think, Mr. Chairman, a Black Sea regional security and development compact, bringing together Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Georgia, Türkiye, and supporting powers as well. This is my humble opinion. And this format must be hybrid, diplomatic, military, and economic. It must include a structured dialogue with NATO, the EU, and key regional investors. And it must treat the private sector as a partner. The private sector can play a very important role, the way you mentioned at the 3 Seas initiative, not as a stakeholder or of secondary importance. Business also must not be a spectator to strategic transformation, it must be an engine of it. Capital shapes corridors, and corridors shapes power. But for capital to flow, I think risk must be shared. This is why the European Union must jointly establish a strategic investment guarantee facility for the Black Sea, protecting key investments and infrastructure, logistics, and energy from geopolitical disruption. I will stop here because these are thoughts that perhaps may be useful, you know, for the content of this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Symeon, because you put a lot on the table, and yes, there's a lot to grab, and we'll take that for the next round of discussion we'll have with the panel and with the room. Now, I'm very fond, and I do agree that business-driven diplomacy is something very important. This is the pillar of the 3 EUCs. This is the pillar of the proposition to have a Black Sea integration, as we have had in the Baltics, as we have had in the Mediterranean Union. Now, there's another response to the global threats, that the transnational threats that all of your countries are facing, is integrated responses. And for that, Morocco, of course, all of your countries as well, Turkey, Egypt, and Greece, offer a very interesting perspective. Now, let's go to Morocco, because when you tackle terrorism, you always have in mind that it is interconnected with trafficking. It is interconnecting maybe with narco-trafficking. It is connecting with a certain number of criminal organizations. Morocco has responded to that very early with the creation in 2015 with a integrated bureau, I would say it in French, Bureau Central d'Investigation Judiciaire, fighting terrorism, and the same way you fight piracy, in the same way you fight criminal financing trafficking, the same way you fight the illegal or the weaponization of migration. This gives us maybe, and of course not to forget environmental pressure, which is triggering also a sort of criminalization on that. So I want Hassane to give us an example of this multi-vectorial diplomacy or multi-vectorial response to global threats, because Morocco is not only, as all of your country, looking in the regional perspective and a global perspective. Morocco is Mediterranean, it's Atlantic, it's African, it's European, it's Western African, and I have to add, yes, Arabic and Muslim, must I add, dear Mohamed. So maybe I give you the floor, Mohamed. Hassane. In French.
Vous avez parlé tout à l'heure des attentats de 2003 au Maroc. Attentats terroristes violents, mais à quelque chose malheureusement, ça nous a permis.
You mentioned earlier about the attacks in 2003, and that is why we've had this multi-dimensional strategy regarding the security, regarding the actors. And you've mentioned the Central Bureau of Judicial Investigations and other security services. Another important aspect, they got the support of the citizens. The citizen is a co-producer and a consumer of security. This allowed us to tackle many challenges. Currently, we are among the 60 countries with zero terrorist impact. And this is very important because we really struggled a lot beforehand and upstream. Terrorism feeds off of conflicts, and it needs wars because wars generate money. Recently, Morocco has created an investigation center of all sources of income or proceeds of crime. And this center has had extraordinary results. Why? Because very many financial structures illegal financial structures were brought down. Our integrated center to fight terrorism connects at the same time the secret services, the action operative services as well, and we anticipate and to move to action, and we dismantle terrorist cells that we call to be nomads. Of course, the judicial the aspect needs to be observed, but when terrorism becomes a crime, well, we are ready, because we get ready beforehand, and we have the intelligence services that surveil up close, and when the actual legal crime is perpetrated, we're ready to strike. And that's why we provide stability as a country, and we manage to fight terrorism and organized crime.
In the Mediterranean Sea, we also find illegal migration, and in partnership with the European Union, of course. That's all I wanted to say.
It's written here, your speaking time, 30 minutes left. Oh, okay. Okay, so how many minutes do we have left? 10 minutes, okay. Make it short, Hassane. Hassane, please, please. Sorry.
The last point, I would say, we are a player of international cooperation. The US, Europe, our partners in Africa, they all know that Morocco is an agent of cooperation, a partner. That's why we can fight together terrorism. Thank you.
30 minutes to 10 minutes. So I still have only 10 minutes, so I will make it short and go on, because there's one question that we haven't raised, and maybe that can be a question addressed to you. How do you see the the other strategic contenders? We haven't spoken about China and Iran, which also have a strategic, both on the of course, Middle East, Black Sea, and Mediterranean Sea, just because the Belt and Road Initiative finishes in Mediterranean Sea. How do you see that challenge?
Yeah. Before I do that, a few words on
please.
Very important points that Mr. TSOMOKOS has raised, and I fully agree with him. He talked about how in the Black Sea we should focus on certain areas of activity with regional ownership, and regional ownership is really critical. And right now, because of this regional ownership, sense of regional ownership, Bulgaria, Romania, and Türkiye are cooperating on mine countermeasures task force, which is to eliminate the danger of freely floating mines because of the ongoing war in Ukraine. Another important issue is connectivity, which was touched upon. In Black Sea region also there are a couple of projects, and I can mention Middle Corridor, which will be tackled in another session as part of connectivity. And what I see as connectivity routes is something to elevate the stakes that we all have in maintaining peace. If we are connected together, it will be a safeguard of peace and stable circumstances. Now, I very much appreciate the Minister raising the issue of bilateral difficulties that Turkey and Egypt had encountered in the recent past. And I'm very gratified to see that there is a rapprochement between the two countries. It's very natural. As a diplomat, I have always respected interacting with my Egyptian colleagues in the past. Therefore, it is great. This brings me to some of the connectivity initiatives in the Mediterranean, and I will tie it to the elevation of stakes in maintaining peace. Maybe at that time, because Turkey's relations were not so good with regional countries, it was in a way excluded in some of the projects, including East Med. And I think it is for the interest of all, including those who initiated these projects, to gradually include Turkey in their ranks, because then we could create a cooperative atmosphere. Now, different initiatives, like 3Cs initiatives, which was mentioned, should not be competing with other projects like Middle Corridor. They can complement, and even we may think of connecting 3Cs initiative with Middle Corridor, and to that effect there could be a linkage between Middle Corridor with IMEC. So the aim should be complementarity, but not competition. And regarding the role of other players, definitely with the systemic strategic competition, there are so many actors. First and foremost, China. China is in the Mediterranean with all important infrastructure it is trying to control, to have very sound engagement with different regional countries. Therefore, we should be aware of it and vigilant for the security, maritime security. It includes maritime security as well in the region, and how we can cooperate against possible threats and challenges emanating from these great competition that we are facing.
Yes, listening to you, I was reminding me, this reminds me of what your former Prime Minister Davutoglu used to call zero problem with all of the Turkish neighbors. That was 30 years ago. So let's go back and shift to Mohamed. How do you see the interconnection between Belt and Road Initiative and Global Gateway? How do you see the threats, or let's say the challenges, of external actors coming from Asia?
Well, I think we should address also the umbrella of all what we are talking about, which I mean, are we living in the world where the power of law is prevailing or the law of power? You know, this will be a very crucial item and very important, and even it will have a lot of impact on everything. If you are living in the world where the, the power of law, I think this will be a very good idea for everybody and for all the emerging countries. But now, unfortunately, we are living in another world, which I think the law of power is, you know, is prevailing and even controlling, you know, all what we are doing in certain areas. So we should address, you know, this point, and I think we should give, you know, a sort of impetus to the UN as one of the most important, you know, organization, which I think all of us we are resorting to it, you know, in order to have peace and security in our globe. So I guess this would be maybe another, I would say, item which we can discuss maybe in another, when you come back to Egypt for this celebration. Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm Clausewitzian, so the power of law speaks a lot to me, because Clausewitz, as you know, mentioned this as a pillar of the international system 150 years ago. So let's go back to Symeon, because this is a very interesting element of discussion we have, the double standards. How can we be credible if we say yes on one side and forget to say the other, and have a contradictory diplomacy? And of course, this is important as we're tackling both to deter Russia and Ukraine, but also to follow up on our values, on universal values, and have a common perspective of what is happening in Gaza. A few hours ago in Brussels, there was 17 of the 27 states who decided to suspend the EU-Israel agreement. How do you see this challenge affecting the relation between the Mediterranean countries? Not all of the Mediterranean countries, not all of the European countries are on the same track, but how do you see this importance of not falling into the double standards and having this as an element of dislocation of the international system?
I think the double standard language is perhaps coming out of the lack of leadership. By the end of the day, I think the European Union, they have not formed an important, you know, security, if you like, vision. So this is what happens these days. So this is why we have different opinions on different subjects. I would like only to complement what Ambassador ILDEM said about the complementarity of the corridors, Ambassador. It is extremely important that all these corridors are connected, you know, the IMEC with the 3 Cs, etc. So I cannot give you a clear answer to this, but I can tell you that we are expecting a good leadership from the European Union about all these issues. Thank you very much.
I would add the connectivity between the Global Gateway and the Belt and Road Initiative, because the Belt and Road Initiative has now 12 years of existence, the Global Gateway is far less ambitious, only 300 billion. So at one point, we have to find connectivity. Otherwise, we will not compete with the long-lasting leadership of China in that area. So it's my mistake because I saw 30 minutes, now it's 10 minutes. So we'll do have 5 minutes. It was not, we have 5 minutes of Q&A. So the floor is yours. You have the microphone, which is circulating. So do not hesitate to make a quick question. And if it's quick, we'll have various questions, of course. Please feel free. It was an open debate.
Lunchtime.
No, madam. We're not finished yet. You have to learn, you have to earn your lunch, dear sirs. Thank you.
Thank you for an outstanding discussion. Not all of the Black Sea nations are fully integrated into the EU and NATO, so I have a question. Is there any thinking on the economic component of this? Because without strong economies, there aren't resources for defense and national security, of an economic free trade zone, something that completely integrates this region economically, because there are a lot of assets, but they're very splintered and not all integrated. At least the energy part is coming together.
Hydrogen may be the answer. Hydrogen is a project which is been shared by all of the Black Sea countries. Mohamed.
Yes, actually, you just mentioned hydrogen, and I think in Egypt we will have a great summit on October this year in order to emphasize on this notion, and this will be, between Germany and all the Africa as a continent. But it will be stationed in Egypt, and I think this will give Africa, a great opportunity to be part of the energy map. And I think with the help of the one of the organizations in Germany, I guess this will be a sort of leap in the energy sector for Africa in general.
Symeon?
There is also, Deborah, there is also a very big meeting next week in Bulgaria, the borders actually between Greece and Bulgaria, with all the energy ministers of the region, which they are trying, to forge a kind of an alliance better to try to develop, the business. So we are optimistic that on this sector, at least, we are going to see some results.
Hassane.
Sur le plan de l'énergie, il faut signaler évidemment ce gazoduc
I want to indicate, I would like to indicate a geostrategic, economic, and especially social project on behalf of 13 countries in Africa which are on the verge of precarity but willing to cooperate.
The discussion also came regarding what was decided in Brussels, the debate on the agreement to be put on hold. I think it's extremely important for the West to uphold certain principles, and we should not keep a blind eye on the ongoing violence taking place in Gaza. Otherwise, the credibility of the rhetoric that the West has been voicing as to rules-based international order will be mocked by the wide audiences in different parts of the globe.
That's true. And it's not only when you compare Gaza and Ukraine, but when you compare Gaza, Ukraine, what is happening in the Sahel, what is happening in the East Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, the population does not accept anymore these double standards, which I think will be vanishing the international order since it has been launched in June 1945. So I wanted to add one really rapid element. I see another perspective of having a mutual agenda from the Mediterranean, from the European and the Black Sea, is to take in consideration landlocked countries. That is important. We need to bring connectivity, not only for economical reasons, but for diplomatic reasons. Therefore, to integrate the Black Sea, you have to find a solution to integrate Armenia, to find a solution to have a mutual and beneficial dialogue with Azerbaijan, which is not as easy as I'm saying it, and of course integrate Georgia into the European Union, as well as integrate Moldova, as we are integrating and will be integrating Moldova and Ukraine at the same time. Same thing for Africa. You mentioned the Atlantic, what we call now the Façade Atlantique, or the Afro-Atlantic Initiative. It's not only 13 countries. It's 23 countries from north to south and the landlocked countries of Sahel, to bring them, to maybe give them an opportunity to stabilize, having a capacity to go through Morocco and the Gulf of Guinea. So I think this is important, because we must mutualize the modelization of regional integration. We've done that in the Mediterranean Sea. It's now happening in Baltic Sea. We need to have that in the Black Sea. Symeon made a very interesting proposal to have a sort of union of all of the countries around the Black Sea on a business-driven agenda. That's one step. But, and we finish by that, Europe is not only 3 seas, it's 4 seas. Because if we connect with South Caucasus, if we integrate Georgia, at one point, if we have the Oriental Partnership reboost, Ambassador Roux is in charge of that for France, then we open to the 4th sea, which is the Caspian Sea. And we open to the 3rd neighborhood of Europe, Central Asia. This was mentioned during the Samarkand summit between the European Union, the 27 European Union, and the 5 members of Central Asia. So this brings a huge responsibility for European Union in order to enlarge the capacity to integrate a larger perspective. I'm just opening the debate and not closing it. Please.
Sur le plan des conflits, et tu m'excuses.
En Méditerranée, la question que nous posons peut en faire partie.
The question we should raise is how can we be part of a solution? I want to speak of foreign interference which are increasing the conflict. We see so many actors acting in Libya with conflicting interests. If you allow Libyans or the Sudanese to solve the problem, then that is possible. When foreign forces interfere, then we have a problem.
To address a question. The French always want to finish on a good perspective.
Thank you so much for the panel. A very easy question for all of you. How do you see the new US administration in terms of security with your country and the Black Sea region?
Okay, that opens a lot of debate, and we will not go to lunch that easily. Okay, let me finish by that. 1 minute each. Symeon, Mohamed.
I think it is too early, I mean, to tell whatever. I mean, Trump is there. I mean, the president is only for 110 days. They're formulating now the policies. They have not appointed even the ambassadors yet in the region. So we'll see how things will develop. We have good feelings that, things will improve in the months to come. We'll see.
Mohamed, Tacan, and Hassane.
Well, maybe I have a different view, actually. Well, I think this administration is working very hard, to maintain the security of USA. That's it. But it doesn't care about the others.
Okay, that was rapid but precise answer. Please,
well, of
Tacan.
course, what America thinks is important. But we should not focus that much on what they think. We should focus on what the regional countries' priorities are. And we try to engage with them and to communicate our expectations. And I agree with the minister that there are certain priorities for the United States, and perhaps this is not one of them.
Pour mon pays, le Maroc,
for my country, the new USA administration, the Trump administration, has not changed the main priority, more specifically security in the Sahara. Any delays brought about by the new inhabitant of the White House obviously would give rise to some geopolitical uncertainty. We will wait and see, but we are mostly interested in our territorial integrity.
Thank you. So I'm so sorry for the time because I got messed up, but the purpose of this panel was to open to the South the discussions on not only the Western Balkan and not only on the Black Sea. We'll open it to Africa maybe next year. This is a proposal I make each time. And I think it's very important to understand that we've achieved quite a lot because the Mediterranean integration took 30 years. It's now precisely growing in legitimacy. And this gives maybe a perspective of modelization in regards to the step after the ceasefire in Ukraine. We have to build not only a security architecture of Europe, but a security architecture of Europe, Africa, and Asia, because we are neighbors, we live in the same civilization, we face the same threats, and of course we are addressing and facing the same contenders. This is why it's important to speak about the external contenders of our common space of civilization. Thank you so much for your attention, and now we can go to lunch.